Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar for Sage 50 Payroll, which is Get Your Payroll Done, Process Payroll. My name's Alice and I'm going to be your host and presenter for the session. I'm also joined by some of my colleagues in the background too. Today we've got Duncan, James and Jonathan, and they're going to be answering your questions in the Q&A throughout the session. And as for what we've got in store today, so one kind of main section to the webinar today, which is of course processing payroll. But first of all, I am going to go through some tasks that we'd recommend that you complete before processing payroll, so just preparing for that process. Yeah, mainly demonstrations today, to be honest with you, focusing on 5 key tasks, which is setting your process date, entering your payments, payslips and pre-update reports, updating the records, and then of course submitting to HMRC too. So I'll be going through each of those steps, and as always, we'll finish with some further support. So today's webinar, this is ideal really for anyone new to payroll. We're going to be breaking down those main steps of a pay run, but for anyone who already uses it, I do have a lot of top tips throughout as well, so hopefully you'll still take away something from the session. Now the first part is basically 4 steps to check, just in order to make sure that you've prepared to process payroll. And you'll do these tasks before you process any payments for your employees each period. So step 1 that we'd recommend, this is to add any new starters that you've had join your company since the last time that you did payroll. They'll hopefully have a P45 or a starter checklist. That was previously called a P46. And you'll be able to use the information on those forms to enter them as a new starter. Now, there are a few ways that you can add new starters in payroll, but generally it's going to be either via the quick employee option or the employee wizard option too. Now, if you're curious or wanting more detail about this process of adding new starters, we have run webinars covering adding new starters, and both of those options that I mentioned in a lot more detail. And you can find recordings of those in the recordings article that we've got at sage.co.uk/webinars. Step 2, this will be to enter any absences that qualify for a statutory payment, so things like sick pay, maternity, paternity, etc. Make sure that you've entered the dates and information for these before you process any payments, and that's going to make sure that they're included and calculated in the enter payment step. Something to bear in mind as well for statutory payments is that they'll pay up to and including the process date. So anything due for the days in the current period will be calculated there at that point. Step 3, this is to put any employees who are not being paid on hold, and that's to exclude them from the pay run. You'll find that is a little drop down in the employee record, which you can see there on that screenshot. So these are employees who they do still work for you, they're still employed, but maybe they're a casual worker and they don't work consistently. So there might be pay periods where they don't receive any payments. If that's the case, HMRC do need to be informed of this, otherwise they'll be wondering why there's missing payments for these employees. So for the periods where they're not getting paid, set their status to on hold in the record, and HMRC will be able to be notified via the FPS that you send in your pay run. And I'll show you a little bit about that towards the end of the webinar. And then last but not least, to prepare to process, step number 4, for those of you who receive electronic notifications from HMRC, this is to check the HMRC mailbox for any new tax code or student loan notices that might need to be applied. Probably more important at the start of the tax year, to be honest. Lots of people receive notices around that time, but yeah, always good to check this. So if you don't receive them electronically, still make sure that you check your government gateway portal or wherever you would normally check for these notices. Make sure they've got any changes applied ahead of processing payroll, just to make sure that you're kind of all up to date and ready to process. And again, we do have webinars covering the mailbox topic specifically as well, and you can find that on the recordings article too. Now, I have already checked this list. I've already entered maternity pay for one of my employees too. I've got an employee on hold, and I've kind of double checked and added anything else that I need to. So once you've checked this list and you've done these tasks, you'll then be ready to go ahead and process your payroll. So this is the main section of the webinar, a lot of demonstration in this, but as I said, I'm going to demonstrate a pay run start to finish, and we're going to focus on 5 key tasks in this, starting with setting your process date. So this is going to determine the tax period that you're going to process for and the pay date which is reported in your HMRC submissions. So that's things like your FPS, etc. And because of this, we do advise that this is set to the day that you're paying your employees. I'll then move on to enter the payments. So this is a good way you're going to make sure that the employees are getting paid the right amount, including any deductions, company loans, attachment of earnings orders, statutory payments, etc. You'll then produce the payslips and any pre-update reports that you might need to check any values, make sure everything's correct there. And then after this, you'll then go ahead to update the records. So that step basically confirms those pay values in payroll, moves them to the employee's payment history, and at that point you won't be able to change their payments anymore without restoring a backup or rolling back your employees. And then the last main step that we're going to cover today is submitting the HMRC. So this is going to be the full payment submission, often abbreviated to FPS. And this is going to report your employee and payment details to HMRC. It will also include any new starters or leavers that you've had. It does also need to be submitted on or before the pay date for the FPS. So 5 main tasks we're going to focus on. There are more steps in between that you can do, as you'll see shortly. It just depends on how you do process payroll though, so I'll touch on a few of those extra steps throughout the session, including of course some top tips from us. But yeah, that's a basic pay run there that I'll be demonstrating. So let's start at the beginning then with setting the process date. This can be changed in a few ways. So HMRC guidance is that the date must be the date that the employees receive their pay, unless that falls on a non-banking day. If that's the case, you might be paying them a bit earlier or later than normal. But yeah, just be aware it must be kind of the date that they're getting paid. So still make sure that your process date is set to that. This is just to ensure that everything's, of course, reported correctly to HMRC, and also what their advice is there. Also, in case any of your employees receive a universal credit, a different pay date can affect that, so just bear that in mind too. But let's go to a demo. I'm just going to begin this by setting my process date. So today I'm going to be working through my pay run using the payroll tasks, so that's just from the payroll section. And then you can see I've got this section in the top with a list of tasks there. You do have another option though, if you are a more visual worker, you prefer kind of looking at the steps in a different way. If you go to View, Change View, and Process Map, you do get those same steps come up there, but just different format for you. So it's kind of like a flow chart instead. This has the same steps. You do have a few bonus ones in there too, like the mailbox to check for any notifications there from HMRC. And both of them do have the steps in the same order too, which is this order to complete the steps in, but totally up to you which you use. But that is the process map option there if you do want to use that. And then just a quick way to get that off, I'm just going to click to the employee section and then back to payroll again, as I will be using these payroll tasks. So top of the list there is change process date. I'm going to set this to my pay date for this month. You can also use this as you're entering the login details to open up your company, so it is on the same screen where you enter your username and password. Now for me, I do have a monthly payroll. We can see all of my employees there have the payment period monthly, and I pay my employees at the end of the month. So this month it's going to be 31st of July. We can see it just confirms the relevant tax period there, and I'll just go ahead and click OK. Once you're in payroll as well, you can also check and confirm the process date just in the bottom right corner too. That will confirm what it's currently set to. So always a good idea to double check this as you're kind of working through and doing each step of your pay run. So that is step 1 done. The next step we're going to focus on is entering the payments. Something to point out here though, if you do use Sage HR, you could also at this point use the import employee data option. And this will be a really good way just to see if there are any updates to your employees' information. So if there's any new starters from Sage HR, any absence notifications to action as well prior to payroll. So this will come up with this window and kind of go through and just double check if there's any new things to import there. So starters, leavers, employee updates, that could be changes to address, things like that, or absence notifications too. But we can see I'm all up to date there. So I can just click close. I'm now going to move on to selecting which employees I want to pay this period. A little bit of advice as well, if you do have multiple payment frequencies or you've got different employee groups set up, I would advise just kind of using the outline here to help select who you want to pay. Will allow you to easily select different groups, and you can toggle this on and off just using that outline icon there. But we can see it does filter for me by default by payment frequency here. Everyone I've got is monthly, so they're all going to be showing in that folder. But if you had some weekly staff, they would show in that folder for you, fortnightly, etc. So you'd be able to go to that group and then just be able to swap to highlight everyone there. And it just saves you kind of working through the list and individually selecting everyone. We have previously ran a payroll spring clean webinar as well, where we showed you how to set up more employee groups and how to control what this is filtered by too. So again, be sure to watch that recording if you do want to know a little bit more about that. But as you can see, I've highlighted everyone. And don't worry if this selection does include any leavers or anyone on hold. They will be deselected when you go into the enter payments option, just to make sure that you don't accidentally put any payments through for them. So as you can see, I do have employee number 5 on hold. I also have a leaver. So employee number 11, they left with me a couple of months ago there. So I'm just going to leave them highlighted to show you what message will come up for them. And then I've also got a new starter as well, employee number 12. So notice they don't have a last updated or last FPS date. They've not actually been processed yet. And if I just check in the record, let's go to the last person there. I can see they started with me on the 7th of July 2025, so they're due their first pay this period. So that is everyone that I want to process. Now, for those of you who've got a lot of changes from one period to the next in terms of payment values or hours, something I do want to mention before we go into enter payments is the reset payments wizard. It will kind of walk you through this step by step. So I'll just click on this for you and show you. I'll click next. And this allows you to choose which employees you want to be included in this process. So if I just randomly select some there. I would also advise always selecting selectively reset here. You don't want to accidentally clear all of the payments. But what this wizard does is it allows you to, of course, select the employees there. And then you can decide which pay elements are going to be set to default, retained, or cleared. So as I say, if you've got a lot of changes from one period to the next, and just to help avoid confusion with numbers from each period, it might be a good idea to kind of clear a couple of the different payments. Totally up to you, but that is a really good idea there if you've got a lot of employees. But I'll just cancel that for now. Another option to enter the hours worked as well is via the timesheet entry option. So you'd enter the hours worked next to the employees in more of a grid format. And I have linked more information to this on the handout. But as I say, today we will be focusing on enter payments. So I'll just go ahead and click that. Now, as I just mentioned before, we do have someone highlighted who's on hold as well as a leaver. So I will see this message come up. This message will only come up if one of these options apply. So for things like leavers, someone who's already been updated, anyone who's on statutory payments or marked on hold as well, will get this message come up there. And it's just going to prompt you to deselect them if they don't need to be paid. So I'm going to select yes. We can see I've got those 2 employees now deselected. There's nothing going to be processed for them this period. And the enter payment screen will come up starting with the first employee in my selection. So enter payments is set up with different tabs along the top. We've got payments, deductions, attachment of earnings orders. So this will be things like council tax arrangements or direct earnings attachments, etc. Company loan repayments. And then we've also got a screen there to check and manage SSP, so statutory sick pay or parental leave. Really good in here to kind of extend or just double check values for the current period for certain employees. We've also got a summary tab, which has a payment side and a deduction side with details and totals of the pay for the employee. An information tab, so this will have more information on different kind of things in here, so like pensions if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the figures there for the employee. Just showing a bit more information there. And then lastly, we've also got a notes section. So if there is anything that you need to keep a reminder of for this employee, or if there's other colleagues who do payroll for you and you need to just let them know of something for this employee, you can just pop that in there for them too. And at the bottom of most of the tabs as well in Enter Payments, you will see this gross to net summary. So this is showing the obviously gross pay to net pay. You've also got information on the tax and national insurance contributions for the current period. With this employee, they have their salary in here, so employee number 1. Nothing else to change for them this period. So you can see I've just got the salary pay element there, hours and number set to 1, and then that salary number just there for them. We do also have an overtime and bonus pay element assigned to them, but as we can see, there's actually nothing there for them. So there's zeros against those pay elements this period. Once you'd finished entering the employee's payments and deductions, etc., and you've kind of worked through the tabs as necessary, always a good idea just to double check this summary at the bottom, make sure that's looking as expected. Same as the summary tab, just double check in here, just in case there's anything there that shouldn't be. And you can also check the employer's amounts in here. So you've got the national insurance contributions for the employer and their pension, if that's applicable too. And then once you're happy with that employee, you'd go ahead and click Save Next. And that's going to move you on to the next employee in your selection. And you can just confirm who that is with their name at the top there. So let's go ahead and enter these payments in. Employee number 2, again, I'm just going to double check their salary, but there's no changes for them. So I'll save next. And the same with employee number 3. So I'm just going to move straight on to employee number 4. Now this is my employee who is on SMP, or statutory maternity pay. I have already entered these dates. I've actually been receiving this since February. And if I check the summary tab, I can see it is already calculating the SMP for the current period. Now, it does depend on your company policy. The employee could be getting just this statutory maternity pay. You might actually top up their SMP with salary and pay them a normal wage for a certain amount of time. But as I say, each company does have different policies and things, so do double check this with your company if you're unsure. But here, at my company here, we do top up their SMP with salary, and they'll end up getting their full pay for the first 6 months that they're off. As I say, they've been off since February. They do still have a few months left of this full pay. The gross pay for the current period should be £2,047.50. Now at the bottom, we've got the total gross, and I can see that's actually too much at the moment. And why that is, it's because it's got their full pay as normal, but it's adding this maternity pay on top of that. So I want to adjust this payment, and I'm going to use the Make Up Basic option to do so. And what that's going to do is work out how much salary is needed to top up this maternity pay to their full pay. So I will show you how this works. First thing for this employee, with this adjustment, I'm just going to make sure that I've got their full pay in the Payments tab against the salary pay element. Essentially what this is doing, this is telling Payroll the value that you want to make up their pay to. So we've got that £2,047.50. I'm then going to go to Summary and then click on that Make Up Basic option. You'll get this confirmation window just advising that it will reduce the salary according to how much maternity pay there is. I'll click Yes. And straight away there I can see that difference with the gross pay. So it's reduced to the amount that I'd specified. It's done that by reducing the hours and number value of the salary pay element. And it's worked out basically how much salary is needed to top up the maternity pay to get them to their full wage. So it's a really good adjustment to make, especially with statutory payments. Again, depending on your company policy, but mine was to pay them their full pay. And I'm happy with everything else in there. So I'll save next. Now next employee, this would normally be my employee number 5, but they're actually on hold. So we can see, of course, it's just skipped straight ahead to employee number 6. No changes for them. In fact, no changes for anyone else really, apart from my new starter. So I'll keep skipping ahead. I do have a mixture of salaried workers. I've got a couple of hourly paid workers too, part-time workers and things like that. But I'm going to skip ahead to employee number 12. They're my new starter here. And I just want to double check that they're getting everything paid properly here. Now, obviously, you'll check these payments in a lot more detail than me, but just doing that quickly for the webinar. And we're now on to my new starter here. So they started with me on the 7th of July. And this month, obviously, they haven't worked that full month. There was a couple of days at the beginning of the month where they didn't work yet, they hadn't started. but at the moment I do have their full kind of monthly salary in here. So when I added them as a new starter, I specified their gross pay per year, and I specified that the monthly paid, and Payroll's converted that into a monthly salary for me. But as I say, they've not worked this full month, so I need to adjust this to work out how much salary they're going to be getting for the days that they've worked instead. So to do this, I need to work out the actual days that they've worked in the pay period and divide that by the total working days for this employee. I will show you an example of this. So this employee, like most of my employees, they do work Monday to Friday. And in July, there's a total of 23 working days for them. Now, since they started on the 7th, they've actually only worked 19 out of those 23 days. Now, again, do remember these days worked and total working days could be different, just depending on the employee's working days and working patterns. But once you've figured out these, you will then be able to do that manual adjustment to adjust their pay accordingly. So again, make sure you've got their full pay in the Payments tab. But this time, instead of that Make Up Basic option, we're going to use this little calculator icon here for this manual adjustment. And the calculation that I'm going to do is the days that this employee's worked, so they've worked 19 days, divided by the total working days in the pay period for them, which in this case is 23. I'll click equals and then tab on my keyboard, and we can see that amount there has reduced there. So this has now reduced the salary according to the days that they've worked. And I can see that reflected as well in this gross to net summary at the bottom too. So that is this employee's adjustment for the current period. I'm happy with what they're getting paid there. But again, always advise just double checking this summary tab, and then of course your employer's figures at the bottom there too. And that is my adjustments all done. Everyone's payments are now entered for July. Before we close this though, I do want to just mention a little top tip. So if you do need to get to the employee's record for any reason and double check anything, just to save you from closing out the vendor payments and losing where you are in the employee list, you can actually click this employee icon in the top left. And this is like a little shortcut to the record. So if there is anything that you need to check for them or any information that you need to add, you can come in here, do what you need to in the record, save that. And then once you close it, you're straight back into enter payments again, exactly where you left off. So if you're like halfway through your employee list, and again, you've got a lot of employees, that's just going to be really helpful just to make sure that you don't lose your place. And yeah, just a little shortcut for you there. So first step there that we did set the process date, and that's going to determine the dates kind of reported on your FPS and things too. Always recommended from HMRC that that's the date that you pay your employees. And we then looked at enter payments too. Now do remember you do have that option for the reset payments wizard if you do have a lot of changes from one period to the next. And if you want a different way of entering the payments, we do have the timesheet entry option too, or importing payment information straight into enter payments. And I have linked to more information on those options just on the handout here. Now for anyone who uses the pensions module, after you've entered the payments, at that point that's when you would be able to run the pension assessment. And that would be able to assess your employee's age and wage, determine whether they're eligible to be enrolled in your pension scheme as well. We did recently do a whole series of webinars on all things pensions related. So if you did miss those, definitely check out those recordings. And one of them is solely based on the pension assessment and does go into a lot more detail on that step of your pay run. Now in terms of enter payments itself, top left, of course, that is that shortcut that I mentioned to get to the employee's record. Then just below that, you've got the different tabs where you can enter the different payments, deductions, attachments, etc. And then, of course, view the summary as well as the employee's payments and deductions this period. Don't forget you do have that Make Up Basic option as well in the summary tab. If you're needing to work out how much salary to top up a statutory payment by, for example, really, really handy adjustment option there. Again, depending on your company policies. And then in the middle of the screen there, that's the main part of the enter payment screen. That's where you'll be able to enter the hours and rates against each pay element or deduction. And also where you'll be able to do a manual adjustment if needed. And again, that was just using that little calculator icon there in the hours and number box. So next step of the payment that I do want to focus on, step number 3, so this is after you've entered the payments, is to produce the payslips and pre-update reports. Now, 3 ways that you can produce the payslips in Sage 50 Payroll. You've got the online payslips, so that's probably our recommended way. This is where you'll be able to upload the payslips to Sage HR. The employees will be able to log into their online portal to view the payslips at any time, so really convenient for them and quick for you as well to get them uploaded. We've also got email payslips, so this is where you can email them to your employees using something like Outlook or Gmail. You'll be able to configure the payslip layout to be sent that way. And you can also protect the payslips via password as well, so you can password protect those ones. And then lastly, the third option you've got there is to print the payslips too. So you'll be able to print them onto plain paper or any stationery that you might have. So let's take a look at those pre-update reports and payslips. So from our tasks on the left, same thing, just following this process here. Next step there is the pre-update reports. So in here, I've got the different sections on the left, including a favourite section, so anything that I've favourited here. These are reports that I run regularly, and what I've done is I've just clicked the little star icon next to them, and it means that in the favourites section now, easy to find each time that I process payroll. I've got a payslip, and then I've got 2 other reports I would recommend that you run each period, which are the payment summary reports, part 1 and 2. So I do want to show you what these look like. So payslips wise, I'm just going to go to the payslips section. We've got different options depending on the type of payslip that you want to produce. Email, so if you do want to configure these to be sent via email to your employees, you've got some options there. But most common way is just the laser layouts there. Different ones depending on what you want it to show. So if you want it to show with the address, with any company loans. But I'm just going to use a standard laser payslip today. I can either double click this to preview it, or you've also got this preview icon. So I'll go ahead and click that. Now, if like me, you do have anyone set up for the online services, you will get this message come up. Just double checking if you want to include those employees with this laser payslip too. So I'll just click yes. And then it'll come up with that preview for you. And I'll just make this a little bit bigger. So this is the payslip for all of my employees. Just got that preview there for them. So double check these. I would also just like to point out these options in the top left too. So you've got the option to print from here. You can also export them and save them if you wanted to kind of save them for a future date to print off and give to your employees. Just be aware, if you do want to print a laser payslip, if you print it directly from here, it's not going to print with this green background. It's just going to have those words and numbers on. The green that's on here at the moment, this is more of like an indicator of what the payslips will look like when they're printed onto stationery. So if you do want to print it exactly like this, little tip from us, export it first, save it to your computer, and then it can be printed with this background too. So a couple of different options there for the laser payslips, just depending on whether you use stationery or not. But I'll just close this. And then a couple of other pre-update reports that I'd recommend running that I've got as favourites are the payment summaries part 1 and 2. These are both found in the summary section. And that's alphabetical order, so I'll just scroll down to P and we can see them there. Again, we'll take a look at them. These are both really, really good reports to run at a pre-update stage. So part 1, I'm just going to zoom in for you. So this has got all of my employees on the left-hand side there, and this is going to show a breakdown of each employee's total gross pay, all the way through the different deductions, so things like tax, national insurance, you've got the pension contributions, any statutory payments for them, all the way through to their net pay, with totals at the bottom too. So again, great one to run each period. Definitely recommend saving this for your own record too. And then same options as the payslips, you can print it from here. Or again, if you do want to just save that for yourself, you've got that option too. And then part 2, again, really great summary, but this time showing slightly different things. So very similar layout for this one, but it's still going to have the employees on the left. And this time you've got more of the employer side of things, so employer pension as well shows on this one, and a little bit more information about the employees on the right too. So that is part 2. So definitely recommend those pre-update reports. If you do use the online payslips, just want to point out that does have its own step in the pay run process, just below pre-update reports. So you'd be able to just click this step, and any employees that you've got set up for the online services with a payslip this period will come up. So you can see I've got 4 employees there ready to upload. Just a case of working through this. So you're just going to be able to select whether you want them published on a selected date, or if you want to publish the payslips immediately. So I'm actually going to schedule these payslips to go up 2 days before the July payday. So for me, that's going to be 29th of July. And once I click Publish Payslips, we'll wait for them to get uploaded. And we can see they've been successfully set to publish on the date specified. So they're scheduled there. And once that date comes around, so once it's the 29th of July, the payslips will then be published. The employees will be notified that the payslip is ready to view, and then they can view them either online or via the mobile app for Sage HR. So another great option there for the payslips. So remember, 3 ways that you can produce the payslips in Sage 50 Payroll. Totally up to you which one you use. You can actually mix and match too. So if you had some employees set up for online payslips, but then others who still wanted them printed out, you absolutely can do that. Just depends on what you'd prefer. And then a few other reports I'd recommend that you run at a pre-update stage. At a minimum, I would say, is the payment summaries part 1 and part 2 as well. Also remember, if you do want to favourite reports, so you've got a lot that you like to run or you struggle to find them each period, favourite in them, just click the star. That's going to put them in the favourites section, and they're going to be dead easy to find next time you come to run those reports. So that's step number 3 of our basic pay run. Next step is going to be to update the records. So what this does, this confirms the current pay values that you've added and adds them to the employee's history. And at this point, you then wouldn't be able to change the employee's payments for the current period anymore unless you made a correction, such as rolling back or restoring a backup. After updating the records, you can then post the nominal link if that is something that you do, and also make any employees who are leaving a leaver. And then while we're here, last step as well, this is going to be to submit to HMRC. So sending the payroll information across to HMRC, including any starter or leaver information too. And I will show you how to do this in the demonstration very shortly. So before we move on to submitting to HMRC, of course, step number 4, this is to update the records. Again, I'm just going to make sure everyone is still highlighted. A good point at this, good thing to do at this point as well is just double check that process date in the bottom right. You want to make sure that you're updating the records on the right date there. Again, still got everyone highlighted. The next thing I'm going to do is just click Update Records. This is one of the steps that you'll be prompted to take a backup on. I would always advise taking a backup at this point. Make sure you name it appropriately too. So in my case, I would call this like July pre-update backup, for example. And this means if anything goes wrong or I notice a mistake that I need to fix for an employee's pay, for example, and I need to get back to this point, I do have that data backed up securely. So always take this pre-update backup there. And once you have, it'll be a case of just working through this wizard. So I'll click Next and Next. Confirmation of the employee selected in this process. And then I'll go ahead and click Finish. And we can see confirmation that they've been updated. So now these employees, we can see the last updated date's changed to display the July pay date, which is correct there. Notice as well the employee on hold, theirs hasn't changed, it's still just set to the last time they were paid. And if we just go into everyone's record there and check the history tab, I can now see July's pay there. So it's moved to the employee's history there with total gross pay and total net pay for that period too. Now, after update records, you'll see it says nominal link. I don't do the nominal link, so I'm going to skip that for today. But this is where you would be able to post your salary journals to your account software, like Sage 50 Accounts. And I don't have anybody leaving me today, but if I did, this is also the point where you would process them as a leaver and you'd produce their P45. So after you've updated the records, but before you submit the full payment submission to HMRC, as you do want to inform HMRC of the leaver in that submission. So actually at this point, we will move on to that final step, which is the full payment submission. And again, this does need to be submitted on or before the employees are paid. So for me, that's on or before the 31st of July. And this is going to report the pay run to HMRC, so information on the payments and deductions, your liabilities for the current period basically, and then of course any details of any new starters or leavers that you've had as well. So we'll click this step. Now, something else you'll see, as I kind of touched on a little bit earlier in the webinar, if you do have anyone on hold, you will see this window come up. And this is just going to determine whether they're going to be included in the FPS or not. I had actually already sent a flag for this employee when they first went on hold. So I'm not going to include them now until they're off hold and getting paid again. So only send this flag the period that the employee goes on hold. For now, I'm not going to include them until, of course, they're next paid, and then they'll be included in the full payment submission as normal. And then you'll get the kind of normal window come up to work through the submission. So click continue. You do get to kind of confirm your gateway registration and company details at this point, so double check that they're correct. Click submit again, and you will get a kind of summary window of what's getting submitted, along with the liability against each employee. So you can see that on the right hand side here, along with the total liability there as well. And once you've checked this over, you will also see any starter or leaver information. So we can see employee number 12, that new starter, we've got that date there. If I had anybody who left me this period, their leave date would show here too. And once you're happy with this, you'll just click submit. And that process bar will go across as it's sending to HMRC. So once this process bar has gone all the way across, you'll be able to see that your data has been sent successfully. You can print this submission log as well if you want to keep record of this FPS. It will also have a correlation ID for the submissions. That's a unique identifier for this submission, should you ever need that. You've got the option to print that there. But apart from that, I'm just going to click close. And last thing there, the last FPS date as well is now changed to that July pay date. So last updated and last FPS are now matching. And that is the fifth and final task that I'll be demonstrating in this part of the webinar. That's actually my pay run complete at this point. So just to kind of recap those last two steps that we did there. So we did, first of all, update the records, and that confirmed those current pay values, move them to the employee's history, as we saw in the record. We then submitted the full payment submission to HMRC. And again, this must be submitted on or before the employee's pay date. And then just a reminder of what this submission includes. So it's starter and leaver information, employee details, payments subject to tax, and then tax, national insurance, and student loan contributions too. But that is a basic pay run and 5 key tasks that you'll need to complete. Obviously, there are more steps in between there, which I have included more information on the handout too. Now, just because your pay run is done, that doesn't actually mean that all of your tasks are complete. You will still have month-end tasks that you need to do. So you might need to run more reports, send your pension data to your provider, or submit an EPS too, so an employer payment summary. So at this point, I do want to let you know we are running a Get Your Payroll Done month-end tasks webinar, and that's going to focus on that side of things as well. Duncan will be taking you through those tasks, I believe, on the 31st of July. So be sure to sign up for that at sage.co.uk/webinars. That's kind of the part 2 to this webinar, so it would be great to see you there as well. But that does bring us to the end of the webinar. We've got just enough time to cover off some further support for you, starting with upcoming webinars this month. So lots more still to come for July. We're running a maternity pay, And we've got the Sage HR Showcase on the core HR module as well coming up. We do also have a whole webinar going through the different HMRC submissions, so what they are, what they include, when to send them as well, and any deadlines for them. So that would be really, really great if you're new to payroll to get yourself along to that one. Online payslips and P60s as well, so if you do want to explore that option a little bit more and see what that's all about, we do have a date coming up for that. And then, as I said as well, the Get Your Payroll Done month-end tasks webinar, where Duncan will be taking you through with those month-end tasks. That is coming up at the end of July too. And then, of course, we've got all of August as well, with more sessions coming up. We've also got the Sage Help Centre, so that's sage.co.uk/help. If you are needing a little bit more help with any topics, or you need to just kind of double check anything, or you want to sign up for our webinars, for example, this is where you'll be able to come for that. You can search for different support guides, demonstration videos, and as I say, we've got a whole webinar section there with the recordings article too. And if you do need to get into contact with us, if you need technical support, for example, we do have all of those contact options on there too. And then last but not least is Sage University. So that is sageu.com. You'll be able to set up a free account on here and access different e-learning courses and bite-sized learning courses too on a whole variety of different products. And you will be able to earn a product certification for that training that you do as well. So whether that's on Sage 50 Payroll, Sage 50 Accounts, if you want to look a bit more at the Sage HR, loads of different options on there for you to gain a bit more knowledge on those products. But that has brought us to the end of the webinar on processing payroll. If you do have any last minute questions before we kind of end the webinar, be sure to submit those now. We will hang around for a few minutes and get those last ones answered. And if you are leaving us now, just remember that you can download the handouts from today, so they'll include all of the slides from the webinar. And yeah, feel free to copy and paste any of that Q&A if you'd like to keep that for future reference. Last ask from me, there will be a short survey that you'll get as you exit the webinar. So if you do have just a moment to fill that out, or any comments and things to leave us, I would really, really appreciate that. The feedback does go a long way. We do read all of the comments that you leave us, and you'll just try to keep improving these webinars going forward. But yeah, that's the end of the session, so time to say goodbye. Would love to see you on some more webinars in the future. Be sure to check up those upcoming sessions at sage.co.uk/webinars. But from me, Duncan, James and Jonathan, it is goodbye for now.